Hello, here I'll go over how to use the graduated filter and adjustment brush, two localized adjustment options within Lightroom. So I'll start with this image here. Here's a before and after. I'll just go ahead to the initial version and start from scratch. First, this image overall is just a bit dark, so I'm just going to raise exposure a bit. Okay. Next, right here under the histogram, I'm going to choose graduated filter. Right? This brings up quite a few options within the graduated filter adjustment options. I know I'm going to want to lower the exposure and add some color at the top and then also at the bottom. So I'll start out with a -1 exposure. Down at the bottom of the panel, there's a color option. I'm going to go ahead and choose a nice vibrant blue. So I have -1 exposure and color blue. And next, with my cursor, I'm just going to drag from the top of the image. If you have a hard time keeping this level, you can press Shift and that will keep it exactly level. Okay. So you can see it's adding a gradient of that effect. If you hover over the pin, it shows that it's added more where you started the filter and then less as it ends. Okay. Next, I want to create a new graduated filter. So I'm just going to click on New. And here I want a similar effect, but I'm going to use an orange color at the bottom. And now from the top up, I'm adding an orange effect. Okay. So if I decide now, perhaps I want the blue to be more toward a purple, I can just click on that pin and see the color is here. I can edit that and you can see how that's changing. Maybe I want it a little darker or a little brighter. I can also edit those effects just by clicking on the individual pin. If I wanted to eliminate an effect altogether, I could simply click on Delete. I didn't really want to eliminate that, so I'm going to just make sure I'm on New and go ahead and put that back. Okay. Then if you click on the graduated filter icon again, it takes you to the normal view and you can proceed with any additional adjustments you might like to make. Right. I'll move on now to the adjustment brush. In this image, for example, here's a before and after. You can see there was very little detail in the face to begin with. If I click on Adjustment Brush, the last of these localized adjustment tools, and if I click on this pin, it shows where an adjustment has been made previously. Basically, exposure was adjusted here as well as temperature. I'm just going to go ahead and start from the beginning at the import. You can see it's very dark. You don't need to have the before and after view, but I find it helpful. So I'll just go ahead and click on Adjustment Brush. Now, since I just used the graduated filter, the settings roll over from one to another. So the adjustment brush now defaults to the -1 exposure and the color orange that I used previously in the graduated filter. So you really want to check that. I'm just going to slide this down to 0 so there's no color selected. I don't want to add any color here. And instead of lowering exposure, I'm going to want to increase exposure. Okay. You can change the size, feather, and so forth of the brush down here at the bottom, or you can use your right or left bracket keys right bracket key will increase the size of the brush. You can see how it's growing there, and the left bracket will make it smaller. I want a nice broad brush. In this case, I want to make sure auto mask is not checked. That tends to detect edges and can sometimes be very useful, but I do not want it to mask and add the exposure unevenly where it comes to an edge. I want it to be nice and even, so just going to paint in some exposure here. If I find it's not quite enough, I can go ahead and increase that. I can hover over the pin to see where it's been done. It's gone onto the side of the face that already has enough light, so I can just go to erase and erase the effect where I don't want it as much. Now you see the effect is not there, perhaps back here too. Okay. I'm going to go back to brush, and I can increase exposure and so forth. If I click out of the brush, now I'm looking close up, it looked fine, but now it looks a bit extreme. So I can always go back to the brush and just start over. Okay, that was way overdone. Let me find my pin. Here it is. Delete. So I'm going to start over with that brush. And maybe just leave it a bit more subtly than it was. Zoom out. That's a bit better. I might want to adjust the nose just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go to one additional photo for this. I'm just going to go ahead and go back to the import. The face, body of the statue is much too dark, almost a silhouette. If I were to raise the overall exposure in the image, then I'm losing detail in the background, but it's about 1.5 to 2 stops that I'd like the exposure increased there. So what I'm going to do instead is go to the adjustment brush, ensure that the color is without color. I'll go ahead and raise the exposure as I want it and just paint on the face and body with the brush. I can increase or decrease exposure here as well. And that's all.